We continue on now to Movie Spotlight, our weekly look at some of the latest cinematic releases at the Korean box office and online. And sharing their thoughts on these films are our film critics. First, we have Jason Bechervaise to my right. Hello, Jason. It's good to see you.
Hello, Jago.
And Darcy Paquet is back with us as well. Darcy, hello.
Hi, good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you too. Okay, so it's a pretty exciting week this week as we have two major local releases, both interesting in terms of their gender as well. What we mean by that is one is a male-driven film, but helmed by a female director, and the other has strong and layered female characters at the fore. Okay, so let's begin with the former. It's called The Point Men, or 교섭 in Korean, and it's directed by Yim Soon-rye. Jason, this is based on a real story, right?
Yeah, the backdrop here will be familiar to many listeners. The film depicts the 2007 South Korean hostage crisis in which 23 missionaries were kidnapped by the Taliban in Afghanistan. This was a real test for the Nomion administration, who had officials on the ground to negotiate with the Taliban. Now, in the film, Hwang Jung-min plays a senior diplomat who collaborates with an NIS agent played by Hyun-bin in an effort to get the hostages released. Initially, they kind of have two, very different approaches to try and secure their release, but when their plans kind of go awry, they come together in one last effort to try and get the missionaries back home. It's, of course, directed by Yim Soon-rye. It's her latest film. She's behind the movies Little Forest, Whistleblower, Forever the Moment. It is historic because this is the first time a female director has directed a movie that has a budget of 15 billion won or more. So it is significant.
Indeed. Okay, so Darcy, this has a compelling setup, A-list stars, a big budget, shot overseas, all the ingredients for a big blockbuster. Does it deliver on that front?
Well, I mean, yes and no. It definitely is a blockbuster in terms of its scale. And, that it's really ambitious in the sense that, this was shot during the pandemic and they actually went to Jordan to shoot this. And so it looks very different from, any other Korean film that's coming out these days, just simply because of the setting. And, shooting it was really complex and complicated. I think in terms of the storytelling, it's different from a typical blockbuster because it's not kind of a hero story. It's not it has, one action set piece kind of, but not, it's not meant to kind of blow the viewer away or to give you these really intense moments of, these thrills or also even, the kind of emotional scenes that Korean cinema and TV content are really famous for. It has a realistic feel to it. And so in that sense, among the, blockbuster scale works that Korea has produced, this one is pretty unique, I'd say.
Okay, so it's not your typical blockbuster fare. Did it work for you?
It did. And I recognize that this isn't going to work for everybody. And, I've been reading some complaints online that, people didn't feel the same kind of excitement or, at the big plot twist, they didn't get the emotions that they were expecting. And in a way, that's kind of what I like about this film because, blockbuster storytelling is so familiar and it follows the same kind of formula so that what's coming. And this is a movie it's based on a real story, about a story that was really complicated and didn't have any easy solutions. And it wasn't the kind of thing where you could just kind of power in with some machine guns and, work about a solution. And really it's about, these diplomats, ordinary people who are faced with solving a really difficult situation that wasn't their fault. And their hands are tied because of political concerns and, the orders that they're getting from above and how they kind of push through that to get the best possible solution that they can.
Interesting. So Jason, what did you think? And do you think audiences will go for a film which is not your typical blockbuster?
I quite like the film. I agree with Darcy. It is quite different. I think there's a conscious decision to not really develop the missionaries themselves. They play a very, very minor would be generous actually. It's they're almost cameos in the film. And I think that's deliberate because, the trip was, of course, controversial. And so it doesn't have that kind of, I guess, connection in terms of the melodrama, and also there's the kind of the bromance as well, which you so often get in Korean films. You've got you've got this NIS agent, you've got the diplomat. They kind of hate each other initially, and then they kind of like each other, and that's something that's been played out in so many Korean films. Of course, JSA. We've seen other movies such as Escape from Mogadishu, and that's not, it's there, but it's very much toned down, and the same with the set pieces as well. And so for that very same reason, for those reasons, I like it. But clearly, audiences do disagree with me, I think, because it hasn't, I mean, in terms of the netizen scores, and you have to be careful when you look at those, but it hasn't really scored highly. Now, film's playing longer now, so maybe, over time, people will appreciate it more. But yeah, it's a different film, and as a result, I liked it.
Yeah, I do think the kind of people who follow the news really closely, might appreciate this film, because it is kind of actually saying something, which is unusual for a blockbuster film.
Okay, another interesting point about this film is it has been shot overseas in Jordan, as you said, Darcy. And we've mentioned Escape from Mogadishu, that's set overseas as well. And there was also the Roundup last year, that was set in Vietnam, I believe. So there seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment to set films overseas and shoot them there as well. Darcy, what do you think it says about the Korean film industry currently?
Well, it's a sign both that the Korean film industry is developing. I mean, this is a trend that was starting in earnest just before the pandemic. And, partly just because, Korean films are really successful. And so, the average return on a lot of these films was quite high. And so directors could afford to go overseas, and there was a lot of competition. And so shooting a film overseas gives the film its own particular look. And there's also just the fact that it's more expensive now to shoot a movie in Korea than it used to be.
Right.
And so the gap between, the cost of shooting a film in Korea and shooting it overseas isn't as high as it used to be. And so in a way, that's kind of given a lot of directors opportunity to explore these stories that they may not have been able to do in the past. We have Bogota, which is shot in Colombia, that, ran into all these troubles shooting during the pandemic, but that will be coming out at some point. And there's another film, Korean title is Pirap, or Hostage, which is kind of a similar kind of setup to this movie, actually. It's also set in the Middle East. And yeah, so the timing is unfortunate in the sense that the audience is not what it used to be now. And so the economics are kind of working against these really ambitious overseas set projects. But at least for the next year or so, we'll have a few more of them coming to theaters.
Yeah, it might dry out.
Interesting. And finally, Jason, a quick note on the director. We mentioned that this is a landmark film because she's essentially the first female director to lead a big budget action film as such. How has she done, do you think? Could this be the start of a trend as well?
Yeah, we're seeing more female directors in the industry, absolutely. Yim Soon-rye is actually the most successful commercial filmmaker. She's made movies in different genres, and Little Forest, which is kind of really enchanting movie set in kind of rural Korea. But she's done all sorts of different films over her career. She made Waikiki Brothers. That was the first kind of collaboration with Hwang Jung-min, so they kind of reunited in this movie. And I think she really does kind of showcase her talent here. I just hope people give the film a little bit of time and are not put off by some of the low scores, on these kind of portal sites, because I really like the film. It's really tight. It's really disciplined, which is unusual when it comes to a blockbuster that's often 2 hours 30 minutes. This is 2 hours. I think it's less than 2 hours, isn't it? So I really liked it, but I can see how some people will disagree with me.
Okay, so that was The Point Men, or Kyosop. The other major film we're covering this week is Lee Hae-young's Phantom, or Ryuryong in Korean, and it's set in the colonial period. Darcy, there's a big and impressive ensemble cast here, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. I mean, with Sol Kyung-gu, Ha-nee, Park So-dam from Parasite, Paquet from Squid Game, Seo Hyun-woo. And it's not only that, it looks really beautiful, and so it's it's a real
interestingly packaged film. It's a glittery film in many different senses. It's based on a Chinese novel called Sound of the Wind by Mai Jia. That was published in 2007, and then there was a Chinese language film in 2009 called The Message, which screened at the Busan Film Festival, and which I saw and which was a lot of fun as well. But this adaptation, they've moved the setting to Korea. It's set in 1933, and it takes place within this seaside hotel where there'd been this assassination attempt that wasn't quite successful, and so 5 suspects are taken, and they're all kind of put within this hotel, and
right.
then they, the police are kind of listening in, and they're trying to figure out who among them is, a member of this organization that plotted the assassination.
Jason, this film is notable for its female characters, as we mentioned earlier. Without giving away too many spoilers, though, what makes this film significant in terms of the roles that they play?
Yeah, so, Korean films have long been male-driven. You just have to look at the kind of star system in Korea, and if you look at the male stars, so often they can age and remain popular. You've got Ha Jung-woo, you've got Kim Yoon-suk, you've got Lee Byung-hun, you've got Song Kang-ho. The list goes on and on. But when it comes to female actors, female performers, there are fewer opportunities for them. There are fewer there are a lot of female stars, but are they really given the same opportunities as their male counterparts? Not really, and not at all, in fact. And so Lee Hae-young here is really it's an ensemble cast, and I'm trying not to give away too much here, but he basically puts the female leads here very much at front and center, and there's some really kind of striking imagery, particularly at the end of the film. Hae-young's not being subtle in his endeavor. So I personally really hugely admire him for doing so. The problem is, though, whenever directors have done this in the past, you've got a strong female character in a film, quite often, invariably, they get you get the anti-feminists out and completely bash the film online. You saw that with films such as, you can go back to 2013, in fact, How to Use Guys with Secret Tips, directed by Lee Won-sok, and then also more recently Kim Ji-yeon, born 1982 and 2019. And that film actually managed to do really well. But again, what we're seeing is, netizens just not happy with the fact that you've got great female characters in a film, and they're reacting to that. But it's terrific. I love the film. Right.
Well, it is a sad phenomenon, the so-called ratings terrorism, but we don't get bogged by that here. Jason, why did you like it? What was good about it?
Yeah, Darcy mentioned the style, because Lee Hae-young, his use of style is really kind of alluring. You see that in The Believer, you see that in Silence, which also stars Park Se-dam, also set in the colonial era. And he just has a really great aesthetic that I just really, really like watching. And as soon as the film started, I was like, yes, this is Lee Hae-young. And it's so beautiful to look at. It's really well paced. The acting's great. And I liked it a lot, actually. I went in with high expectations. I was lucky to go and see the movie at the film's premiere. And, it far exceeded that. So, definitely go out and check it. It's a great film. And
Darcy, what did you think?
Yeah, I loved it. I think it's the director's best film. It's, the first half of the film has a lot of intrigue, and you can enjoy just kind of watching the style of the film and all the details of it. But then it kind of breaks into these action set pieces in the second half, and those are really well executed too. It's a lot of fun to really watch things.
Yeah, because at one point I thought, okay, it feels like kind of almost like a chain piece where it's like all set in one place. And then suddenly it just erupts. Wow, and it's just great, yeah.
It's sort of like Knives Out if everybody grabbed guns and started to shoot each other halfway through.
Okay, it sounds fun. So that was Phantom, or Ryuryong. That's where we're going to leave it for Movie Spotlight this week, gentlemen. Thank you for your reviews as always, and have a good weekend. We'll see you next time.
You too. Happy Lunar New Year. 새해 복 많이 받으세요.
Yeah, see you next time.